Hey everyone, welcome back to the table. Today we're looking at Infinities Defiance of Fate. This is a game for 2 to 4 players and it plays in about 45 to 90 minutes. Now, Infinities Defiance of Fate is a game that utilizes strategic card play and tactical dice chucking action. So, what's going to happen is players will utilize the dice to take different abilities from their player track and off of their cards, and they will move around the multiverse that they will explore at the beginning of the game. So players will reveal tiles and then they'll build out this world. There are 7 unique tile types in the game. We can talk about them right now. We have a travel tile. When you enter a travel tile, you will actually get to warp your pawn to a sacred or a city tile. A sacred tile, at the beginning of the phase, if you're on it, you will get to lock in one of your dice as a wild symbol. If you enter a city tile, you will get to draw 3 cards immediately. Stealth tiles bypass the walls. You'll notice the tiles have walls that will cut off line of sight and reach among players. A wild tile is going to, at the end of your phase, you will get to move and replace a tile that you've explored in your world. Oasis will give you an additional gambit token. Gambit tokens are very important. They're going to allow you to attempt to block opponents if they're targeting you, and they will also allow you to activate your super cool asymmetric player powers. There is also a satellite. A satellite is going to let you reorient and warp tiles and kind of manipulate the way the board is laid out. And so those are the ways that you can interact with the world that you are building. You will also select at the beginning of the game a scenario, and this is the first beginner scenario. The way the scenarios are laid out is if you take a top row action, you gain +2 points, and then it unlocks the ability for you to give your opponent the bottom row action. So if you activate a gambit ability, then you can flip an enemy tile and give them -5 points. If one of your cards is destroyed, you can actually then play a card using a standard energy action to gain +5. And at the end of the round, players will gain points equal to the number of active cards they have. Your active cards are cards that are in your group and in your timeline. So let's take a look at your player tableau and what is going on with all this awesomeness. So you can have 3 cards in your timeline. Your timeline is a way that you can prepare cards for future turns. To play a card into your timeline, you spend 1 energy and you actually place that card into your timeline. And then to play a card out of your timeline, you pay an energy. So 1 energy to go in, 1 energy to come out. Now some cards have prepared abilities, so while it's in your timeline, it gives you an additional effect that can be very strong and very strategic for you to play cards into your timeline and be able to use them throughout the game. Your group is your units. So these are the guys that are in the trenches, the ones that are going to be dealing damage to your opponents, and they are all sorts of creatures, and they are absolutely gorgeous. So at the beginning of the game, you will get 3 energy points to deploy units into your group. The energy costs are in the bottom left, so if I wanted to play the Blade Scale Savage, I could play that, and he gains 3 health units, which are the Gambit tokens. They're multi-sided. And then if I wanted to deploy the Sandspear Knight, I could do that using my last energy. So I had 3 energy to spend at the beginning of the game to do that. Now when you deploy units into your group, it actually manipulates and changes your attribute track. So I go up 1 on Fortitude, and I go up 1 in Power. Now you start the game at level 1, and then as you play cards into your group, or as cards are destroyed from your group, your track will ebb and flow. It'll go up, it'll go down. Very, very interesting design on how your units in your group affect your choices and your strategy for your turn, both in the current round and future rounds. And so all of these have a variety of different abilities. When you lock in one of these dice, you'll get to draw cards. This will allow you to re-roll your dice. You'll get an additional die. If you reach the 5th track, you'll actually go up in the other 2. So really, really interesting resource management on how you want to manipulate your attribute track. And so each player will also start the game with an asymmetric player power. So this is Raizo, Hero of Dawn. Your Gambit action, if you roll a Gambit die, it will allow you to use one of these powers. And then you spend Gambit tokens to use the powers, or to use block checks on opponents if they're trying to target you. There are a number of other We have Master of Ash and the World Shaper, the Cable Leviathan, just phenomenal sci-fi art. Again, really, really beautiful. There are 2 factions in the game. I'm playing as one. The other faction, here are some of their cards, and just really, really well done artwork. Graphic design, very intuitive, well laid out. Again, very easy to follow your actions and what you have available to you. So at the beginning of your turn, you will take your 5 dice and you will roll them. And then you will get a certain number of actions you can use. So you will lock in 3 of the 5 dice. So I'm on a sacred tile, which allows me to lock in a wild symbol if I wanted to. I will lock in the wild symbol that I rolled. I will lock in a fortitude, and I will lock in another wild tile off of my sacred tile that I'm on. So these are the 3 dice that I have available to me during this round to use for actions. So what can you do with these actions? Well, a wild can be anything. So you could spend it as energy, and energy you use again to play cards out of your hand or to play cards out of your timeline. You could use power, and a power symbol is going to allow you to attack your opponents and start dealing damage to their group of units. You can attempt to steal their gambit tokens, or you can even attempt to destroy cards in their group or in their timeline. You can use your fortitude to move among the tiles to get range with your enemies, or move to activate different tiles. So if I were to use this, I can move up to 2 spaces. I can move into the city tile and immediately draw 3 cards. Additionally, if you have line of sight, you have 3 tiles you can see to your opponent, so 3 reach. You can actually flip them. So if I were to activate my gambit ability using this wild, I would score +2 points, and then if I used my fortitude that I rolled to flip their tile, I would give them -5 points, and now I have cut off line of sight from them to me. And that could be really important. Again, there's a lot of tactical decision making to be made in the game based on when you want to activate and sequence your actions for the turn, and trying to gain sight on them but trying to deny them sight of you. You can also use your gambit token to activate your player abilities, which we talked about, and then after you take your 3 actions with the different dice that you've rolled, you will then pass your turn to the other player. A skirmish game lasts 5 rounds, or until a player reaches 50 tied. Players will start at 25, and turn order is determined based on the current level of tile that players are on. And so that will ebb and flow throughout the game as well. Again, Infinities Defiance of Fate is a game that just really want to dive into this world and figure out all the intricacies of the tactical style of play. Again, with all of the asymmetric player powers, with all of the cards, there are tons and tons of different synergies and combos and abilities to use in this world. There is a lot of exploration to do for players to dive in. It will take a lot of time to master the ins and outs of the game. As far as the replayability, very high. Looking forward to getting this to the table more often to start exploring the world that they are building in Infinities Defiance of Fate. This has been Derek with your Board Game Spotlight, and this has been your overview of Infinities Defiance of Fate.